Hey guys, so I'm going to explain body paragraphs today in this video, and I'm working from the same intro that I posted previously. So the thesis from that intro was, however, Jay Gatsby wants more than what is possible. His dream never becomes a reality, despite his climb to the upper class and his excess of wealth. So main thing I'm proving here, I'm trying to argue that Jay Gatsby wants more than what is possible. And even though he climbed in class and he had all this wealth, his dream never becomes a reality. All right, so my body paragraphs, I have two in this example, and one is going to try and establish what his dream was and why, and how his class and wealth actually shaped it. And then in the second body paragraph, I'm going to really hit the dream never becomes a reality aspect of the thesis and why the whole thing was impossible. So some of you may have a thesis where there's 3 points you've laid out and each body paragraph fits with one of those. In this case, I have 2 that are meant to build on each other. Okay, so Jay Gatsby is Jay Gats before he amasses his wealth through bootlegging, and the low social class he came from seems to incite his ill-fated climb. So your topic sentence should be a sub-point of your thesis. It should connect with it. So the low social class he came from, that connects back directly to when I talk about his climb to the upper class. Then seems to incite his ill-fated climb. By calling it an ill-fated climb, I'm acknowledging this point from the thesis. His dream never becomes a reality. Okay, so the next sentence is my point, a subpoint. I say, while Daisy becomes the reason for Gatsby's pursuit of his unique American dream, Gatsby's vision of greatness for himself started long before he met Daisy. So in this point, I'm looking to talk about the origins of this impossible dream that I'm going to try and argue was too much. So this sentence would be my point. Then I go on to say, Jay's new name and identity, formed at the age of 17, sprang from his platonic conception of himself, which opposed his poor farming parents in North Dakota. And I'm using this incorrect citation because I'm working from a PDF document. So this would be my evidence. So now I'm moving into commentary, and I'm really going to try and make sure this commentary goes back to my thesis. So I say, coming from low beginnings actually motivates Gatsby, and when he meets Daisy as a penniless young man without a past, his obsessive and single-minded personality grabs onto the final piece of his dream. He must earn enough money to win Daisy. With the motivation and work ethic of an underdog in a fight, Gatsby pursues his vision of happiness. So down here, first of all, I'm bringing up again his low beginnings, which is always something I'm mentioning since the start, his climb to the upper class from the thesis. So I'm always wanting to go back to this idea that Gatsby was trying to, he was here and he was trying to get up here. Then I'm using words that show some of my judgment. That's part of my point. Remember, I'm saying this dream is impossible. So I'm describing Gatsby as obsessive and single-minded in his pursuit of the dream. I could look at Gatsby differently. I could see this as like a determined individual who knows what he wants and he's fighting for the love of his life. But instead, I'm describing him as obsessive and single-minded. I do acknowledge, he's like an underdog in a fight, but it's tinged with this judgment of like, Gatsby, you're wanting too much, you're doing too much. All right, so within the same paragraph, the next sentence is, throughout the novel, Gatsby chases the feeling of being with Daisy in his youth. This is a bit of a plot summary point. It's not a very strong subpoint, but it's acting as a transition because once I've told you that Gatsby is obsessive and single-minded, I'm now going to try and characterize what the dream was and why it could never have happened. So my evidence is going to come next. It says, in fact, that night Gatsby kisses Daisy, he sees that the blocks of the sidewalk really formed a ladder and mounted to a secret place above the trees. He could climb to it if he climbed alone, and once there he could suck on the pap of life, gulp down the incomparable milk of wonder. Okay, this is a really long quote, but it's the only long quote I have, and I couldn't get rid of any part of it. That may happen to you sometimes. You'll embed, you'll pick and choose, but there's this one quote. To me, I couldn't cut this one down. The commentary for it, I'm connecting it all the way back to this impossible dream. I say Gatsby can actually see a ladder, symbolic of the social ladder he tries to climb for the duration of his life. After earning his fortune, throwing parties, arranging a meeting with Daisy, and carrying on a secret affair with her at last, Gatsby is still unsatisfied. His dream is incomplete, and his greed pushes him to his literal death. So this is my commentary, and it's my transition. So you can see I didn't actually follow the whole, 2 sentences of commentary plus a separate conclusion sentence. I used a semicolon here and gave myself a transition at the end of the second sentence. So feel free to play around with that. It doesn't always have to be T, peck, C. There's obviously modifications you can make. So at the end here, I'm again using that judgmental language. He's still unsatisfied. These are negative things. His dream is incomplete. Then I use a word that's very obviously negative. His greed pushes him to his literal death. Not his romantic pursuit of the woman he loves, not his determination to grow his wealth and throw parties. I'm being very clear that this was a bad thing. Okay, so if in the first body paragraph I'm explaining Gatsby's humble beginnings and the formation of his dream, the second paragraph is really going to hit home why this dream could never become a reality and why he wanted too much. So I start by saying the dogged pursuit of a dream and the wealth acquired along the way do not spell out success for Gatsby in the end. This was sort of a callback to my hook. And then I jump right into evidence here. Sorry, this was related to my hook, but this is actually acting as my topic sentence. And in a way, it's doubling up and it's also acting as a point. I'm kind of fusing the point in with the evidence. So let me discuss that. So it says, along the way, Nick tells Gatsby, you can't repeat the past. Even Daisy spells it out for Gatsby during the heated plaza scene. Oh, you want too much. I love you now. Isn't that enough? And notice I'm messing around with some other forms of embedding evidence. There's a direct quote evidence. Nick tells Gatsby. And then I tried out a semicolon. So both are MLA approved, and there's some different ways you can embed stuff. So then my commentary comes in. Gatsby seems to have blinders on, and he cannot see beyond his dream. While the green light at the end of Daisy's dock signified Gatsby's longing and unfulfilled desires, it quickly fades to be an unenchanted object by the time Gatsby finally has Daisy in his arms. Yet Gatsby does not stop. Even as he asks Daisy to run away with him or deny that she ever loved Tom, he cannot be satisfied with the answers he hears. So here would be my commentary. And again, it's clear I've chosen quotes that are really showing how obsessive and kind of delusional Gatsby is. That's how I'm painting him to prove my thesis too. I'm not lying about him, but I'm kind of choosing the evidence that will really show the part of his personality that I think led to the failure of his dreams. This right here, yet Gatsby does not stop. That's kind of my transition into my next piece of evidence. I'm using sort of a TPEC-EC format for this paragraph. Towards the end of the second body paragraph, I jump into my last pieces of evidence. So I say Gatsby, who from the very start Nick identifies as having an extraordinary gift for hope and a romantic readiness, is actually more of a tragic hero than a romantic one. And I've fused some commentary in that sentence too. Gatsby's low social class and high ambitions may skyrocket him to the world of new money and even bring him closer to his dream girl, but his greed and unrealistic expectations cause him to lie dead under a thin red circle in the water of a pool. So notice I did something that sometimes I tell you guys not to do, which is to end a paragraph with a piece of evidence. In this case, I'm not using the evidence to introduce more evidence that will prove my thesis. In this case, I'm only using it as a plot point, like a bit of description that goes with my commentary. If I was writing an essay right here about the motif of the color red and its importance in the novel, dropping this quote at the end wouldn't be a good idea, because the color red is used in these very specific scenes in Gatsby. We had a group present on motifs and color, and they could tell you this too. But dropping that without explaining the importance of that color in that scene isn't okay. But using this quote as sort of like yeah, he pursued these dreams and they were too much and he died in the end, kind of evidencing that yes, they were too much. That's all I'm using the quote for, is just to emphasize his death. All right, so the next video is going to include the conclusion, information about incorporating a so what statement, zooming out, and also how to do that with the catcher essay. So I will be posting another one tomorrow. This one was long, but body paragraphs are longer than introduction paragraphs. So thank you guys for listening, and I hope this was helpful. Please email me if you have any questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing you apply all of this stuff to the Catcher in the Rye essays. All right, bye guys.